Hi, I'm Fredrika and I'm a trans woman, a vocal coach and a choir leader.
Last weekend I went to Copenhagen, Denmark, and on the way I stopped at Malmö Music Academy to visit and make a video about one of their students, Fredrika.
My name's Fredrika Appelgren Stenstedt. I go to the music teacher program at the Malmö Academy of Music with an emphasis on genre diversity vocals. I am a trans woman. My pronouns are she and her.
Music and singing has always been a big part of Fredrika's life.
I've always sung, basically. It runs in the family. I started in a children's choir when I was 3 years old. I started playing the violin when I was 5. And I went to this choir school in Stockholm, where I'm from 10 years old all the way through high school, and did lots of choir singing competitions and festivals and all that jazz with choir. So I'm here because I'm studying to be a choir leader, mostly, and also with a little bit of a focus on, let's say, gender diversity vocals. Fun way of putting it.
The reason that she's focusing on gender diversity vocals is that she's a trans woman herself.
I came out a few years before I came here. It's been very good. Universities, in my experience, are very good with LGBT people and inclusion in general. But there is really, and I've noticed that there is a gap in knowledge among singing teachers, especially when it comes to transgender voices. I've actually read all the research available on trans voices in Swedish. Not all of it in English, there's a bit more, but there's not a whole lot.
When it comes to choirs, they are traditionally very gendered.
From my experience, coming from a classical background in choral singing, the gender norms, the gender norms are really packed into that very tightly. You have the sopranos and altos, the women's choir, you have the tenors and basses, the men's choir, and if you don't fit neatly into those boxes, then what are you doing and what are you wearing? I think that's sort of where my sort of activism comes in.
It seems that most transgender people have strong feelings, positive or negative, towards their voice.
Transgender voices are interesting because they aren't really a part of the norm, naturally, but they go against a lot of the ways that a lot of academia and singing teachers look at voices, if they haven't had the proper training or proper vocabulary to understand what's actually going on. One of my singing teachers put it best when they said that the voice is the closest instrument. The instrument that's closest to you as a person. Everyone knows that their voice is a part of their person, but for a trans person, you are actively changing your voice oftentimes to fit more with who you are. And that's not really a way of looking at things that a lot of singing teachers or people in academia have really had a time to think about.
And this is what Fredrika's relationship to her voice has been like.
So I had a testosterone puberty, as we'd say, and I remember very clearly that I knew that it was coming. I was very late in puberty, and I knew it was coming. I could see all the other testo people, whatever, going down in pitch because I was singing all the time through that. And sometime in 7th grade, by the end of 7th grade, I knew I'm not going to be able to sing soprano anymore. And that was very sad. And I remember making a big thing of my last performance as a soprano, which was a solo piece I did just for choir summer camp. At the evening recital, I sang a song called Across the Bridge of Hope in my little blue vest that all the sopranos and altos wore. And when I was done singing, I took that off and put on the clothes of the tenors and basses in my choir. I felt like I needed to do that because I was gonna miss my voice. I don't think I really regret going through the puberty thing because that's also given me a whole lot of other things I can do with my voice. But I feel the connection to my old voice, and I can sort of see the trans undertones coming in there. today I'm definitely quite happy with the voice I have. I am sort of exploring it even more now that I'm here and have lots of good voice coaches. I've actually gotten permission from the school to have special voice lessons next semester with an actual trans voice coach as part of my education, which is super nice. Because there's actually, at this moment, I am not aware of any trans singing teachers. No trans singing teachers in all of the Nordic countries. So I will likely be the first, which I'm quite excited about because it is such a part of the norm critical movement, this movement towards breaking down the hard and fast barriers between the gender divide. And I think through culture is a very important angle that we need to get onto that from. With the choirs where there's one row of sopranos and altos in skirts singing, and then there's one row of tenors and basses in suits singing. Apart from it being a very hard divide between the gender categories, it's also a bit boring. And these past few years, I have seen a couple of ensembles that are a little bit more varied in their attire and how they place themselves, which I've found quite refreshing. And I think that's something to be explored further and expanded upon.
Is teaching singing to transgender students any different from teaching singing to cisgender students?
So teaching trans people singing is a lot more similar to teaching cis people singing because we have the same vocal anatomy, we work in the same way, we have the same problems, the same kinds of tensions that hold us back. So a lot of it is the same. There's a very big part of it that is language use and how we talk about the voice. As I said before, with the categories of a male voice and a female voice, that's still very much a part of singing teacher culture. I think going past that is where where you meet resistance, where you need to get past that in order to teach a trans student effectively.
But the fact remains that a lot of transgender people feel very uneasy about their voices.
You have a voice and you have a set of vocal cords and a shape of your mouth and your vocal tract. In some ways that can be changed with testosterone, for example, for trans masculine people. Otherwise, it doesn't really change. You can learn to use it in some other ways, but just like with cis people in some instances, you need to sort of sing in a place where your body and your voice feels good. That's, I think, needed for a lot of people, not just trans people, to feel like they can make themselves heard in a way that they feel comfortable with. A lot of that has to do with vocabulary, as I mentioned. Because what you realize when you start to think about it is these problems exist in cis people as well. Cis women, for example, who go through menopause often lose a bit of their top range and might have to change voice categories if they're in a choir, for example. And there's also like falsettists, what we call a countertenor, which is a cis man singing very high falsetto up in alto, even soprano ranges. So there is a lot more gender bendy stuff in the voice already, more than I think people realize, because we're so bound up in the system of we have two of the women's voices and two categories of men's voices, and they don't mix. In reality, the two middle voices are like a third apart. Those ranges are not very far apart. So there's a lot of overlap there in the middle. I'd love to see choirs using that and having sort of a middle ground. Just like with gender, that we have women, we have men, and we have people all around in between, because voices are the same.
Fredrika also shared a heartwarming story about her first day at Malmö Music Academy.
So when I came here on my first day, I went into the library and looked at the new arrivals section, and I saw this book called The Singing Teacher's Guide to Transgender Voices, which first of all made me immediately feel validated and at home here, and second, it made me realize how little information there is about this stuff. how it's really not widely distributed at all.
And academia is also an arena where these things need to be investigated further.
So in our second year here at the music teacher program, we write a thesis about a research subject that we do. And I actually wrote about trans people and singing. So I did a survey of trans people in Sweden and their relationship to singing in groups and what their experiences have been. We got some interesting results, definitely. The biggest thing, I think, was that we had a lot of non-binary trans masculine people answering and a lot of trans men answering. And the trans men overwhelmingly were more accepted and felt less excluded in choirs than the non-binary people, which I can understand, being as the voice does lower with testosterone to fit a typically cis male voice type, voice range, but a non-binary person then does not necessarily fit in to all of these criteria for a voice category in a choir, which means that they are more likely to be excluded, more likely to be made fun of or looked sideways at in a lot of different ways. It was super interesting to actually get those results. I, as a trans person myself, have a lot of connections and can get this data in, and I don't think a lot of music academia could do that. So I'm also interested in pursuing that. I have a lot of things going on.
As you might have noticed, Fredrika loves talking about these things, and people want to listen.
So last year there was actually a gender conference with regards to music, like music and gender, at the school. And I was invited to be on a panel talking about choir singing and gender and the intricacies there in between. On that panel, the other panelist was a woman from the Association of Swedish Choral Conductors, who then invited me half a year later to be on the Swedish Choral Conductors Association's yearly conference and speak about the same things at that conference. So together with Kim Phipps, I was there talking about gender and the voice and choir, and it was great. And I could feel that a lot of the people there have questions and they don't know exactly how to approach this subject, but they want to. A lot of people want to change, they just don't know quite how. And I think that's something I'd like to work on further.
To sum up, what needs to change within the music, singing and choral world in order for transgender people to feel more included?
There's a lot of things that have to change, obviously, but mainly it's just a question of acceptance of people's differences, which extends not only to transgender people, it extends to people of color, people of different backgrounds, people singing different kinds of music. Just an acceptance of that all music is valid, as in all people singing that music are valid. Because then I think we can explore a lot more of what music and communal singing, especially, which is what I'm very fond of, and explore what that can do for people, because it is one of the most human things we have.
If you enjoyed watching that video, please like, comment, subscribe and share the video. I really appreciate you showing your love in that way. If you also want to support the channel financially, that's possible via Patreon, but really no pressure. See you next time!